welcome to the year-end IPO wrap special. I'm your host Nikki Mirchandani and I'm here to give you a quick recap of the past year IPOs which have done extremely well in terms of the listing gains and also a bit insight and outlook for 2024. 2023 became a landmark year for primary markets, marked by second highest count of mainboard IPOs in over a decade. Around 57 Indian companies collectively raised in a staggering 49,000 crore through mainboard IPOs. Interestingly, while this surge was notable, there was a slight dip in the number of firms filing draft red herring prospectus (DRHP) with SEBI compared to the preceding years. But let's delve into the finer details of IPOs, at least the one that were most bid for, and also the ones that received maximum, let's just say, listing day gains. Overall, there were 5 of such issues which apparently did really well in terms of just the bidding number, right? At least Tata Technologies, DOMS Industries, GSW Infra, IREDA and Cello World. Essentially, these were some of the names which stole the show. These 5 issues received bids totaling nearly 4 lakh crore, with Tata Technologies alone attracting bids worth around 1.5 lakh crore. But in terms of listing day candidates, it was Tata Technologies which soared in with staggering 162% gain, leading the pack. Following closely were Ideaforge Technologies, Utkarsh Small Finance Bank, IREDA and Mothison Jewellers. All of them had substantial listing day gains. But to take this year-ender conversation forward, we're being joined by Gaurang Shah, the Senior Vice President at Geojit Financial Services, and Nirav R. Karkera, who's the Head Research at Fisdom. Well, evening there, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Good evening, Nikki.
All right, thank you for taking out the time, at least at 4:30 on the last trading day of this year. Indeed, the dedication seems to be way higher. But let's start off on the basic note. First, Gaurang, to you. Which IPOs really stood out for you? What were the big misses for you and the ones you think could be dark horses for 2024?
So, thank you, Nikki, for having me on the show, and good evening to all of you. Wishing all of you all a very happy and a prosperous 2024. So, I'll keep my comments restricted to the coverage that we had on the IPOs, recent IPOs. And the 2 that stood out for me were Tata Technologies and IREDA. And my sense is that both these IPOs came with businesses which were easy to understand to the subscribers, to the investors, point number 1. Point number 2, both these businesses have very strong growth outlook as we go into the future. And in terms of valuation, I think there was a lot that was left on the table by the management and, of course, the advisors to the IPOs. Fair valuation was there, and hence we saw the kind of subscription that these 2 IPOs attracted. And of course, we all know the history post-listing. So these were the 2 IPOs, Tata Technologies and IREDA, which stood out. And in fact, I would go a step forward and advise all those people who have missed out the opportunity either in the IPO or after getting listed. I think whenever market gives you opportunity in form of corrections, please do look at these 2 businesses because they look very promising.
Okay, Gaurang, I just missed on. You said IRED and the second one was?
Tata Technologies.
Okay, Tata Technologies, still after the gain that you've seen and the valuation gap that you've seen between the group companies, you're still vouching for Tata Technologies, right?
You know, they always say that beauty lies in the eye of the beholder, Nikki. So
So the valuations don't look at a premium to you as compared to the other counterparts for Tata Technologies?
So you have to look at the futuristic growth, and you can't look at 500 rupees floor of Tata Technologies IPO and think that at 1200 whether I want to pay more than double the price of the IPO. So you know, the kind of business model that Tata Technologies has, I think it's going to evolve over a period of time. And my sense is that, you know, looking at forward businesses, 1200 might look a little bit expensive now, but 1 year, 2 years down the line, I think it will do justification.
I think for me, Gaurang, the key highlight was the fact that people were all looking at Tata Technologies and there was this high bidding which came in for Tata Technologies, and the listing gain also was perhaps measuring up to the expectation. But I think the dark horse was quite, for me at least, IREDA with the kind of splendid performance that it did see, especially after listing. That was something to really write home about. But I'm also going to be talking about, Gaurang, to you, which were the stocks, according to you, or the IPOs, which did not meet the expectation or were a disappointment of sorts for you?
So I think FedFin was one that missed on listing, though there was a lot of anticipation in terms of the business model that was explained by the management. But it, I think, took a blip on the listing day, and post listing there was a little bit of recovery, if my memory serves me right. And of course, the masses that it caters to in form of giving out loans is also quite unique. And they've done a very large expansion also, Nikki, in terms of opening up new reaching points. So my sense is that this was one particular IPO that possibly just blipped on the listing, but then I think it stabilized a little bit.
All right, Nirav, now to you. Which were the IPOs that, according to you, really surpassed your expectation and also disappointed you at the same time?
So, Nikki, always a pleasure chatting. So, this year has been quite exciting for primary markets, right? And, among all the listings, there are a few that have definitely, caught our attention. So, I'd say at the top of it, I would put IREDA. So, you'll be happy to hear, we feel the same about IREDA. I feel it is a very, well-run business operating in a segment that has not fully evolved yet, not exactly sunrise right now, but definitely very early into the overall renewables game. And this is one of the stronger players in the segment, especially in the listed universe. So it offers access to to play very strong sectoral tailwinds that are yet to come in through the years to come in. And despite a stellar listing, I feel there's a lot of growth potential that will culminate into earnings growth and finally reflect in further growth in share value for all investors. Apart from that, I believe JSW Infra, I will put this somewhere between the most promising as well as the most promising IPOs, and at the same time, the IPO that I was slightly disappointed to see on debut, because I expected a whole lot more in terms of uptake from the investors. The business is a very solid, robust business. The order book's looking really good. The management clearly laid out their plans for expansion, and there's no reason to second guess many of those aspirations, right? So even with a fair sense of semblance, one could expect JSW Infra to do really, really well. However, it did not really, do as well as one would have expected. So, though it did not do badly, I believe it could have done far more better in this year itself. However, I feel, we are all in for the longer haul, and as the earnings come through, as the books come through, there will be a lot of investor favor that rotates in favor of JSW Infra.
Okay, you said the IPO that surpassed the expectation for you. Sorry, I just missed on that.
It's IREDA.
IREDA. Okay, so both of you have apparently given IREDA, which has surpassed the expectation. But Nirav, according to you, going forward, which seems like a dark horse, the listing gains perhaps would have been a little subdued in 2023, but you think has got good potential in 2024?
Response, one is definitely JSW Infra. If I have to select from within the universe, JSW Infra is yet to realize its full potential on the markets as yet. So we believe going ahead, JSW Infra could put up a very good show. And along with that, I believe Utkarsh Small Finance Bank, it did decent, but again, there's a whole lot potential still left in the bank. If you look at the book, if you look at the quality of assets, it has been improving over the period, and on a relative peer comp basis, it is pretty strongly positioned. Of course, there is one generation of small finance banks that have clearly asserted their dominance in the segment, but probably it's time to look at the second tier from where on there is scope for much higher delta and growth going ahead. So from that perspective, I believe Utkarsh Small Finance Bank is yet another one that I believe holds a lot of steam. And just another name would be IdeaForge Technology for reasons almost you know uh, right from top to bottom. There are a slew of reasons that actually work in favor of IdeaForge Technology. It is all hinging on final execution and materializing of their aspirations and plans. But once that happens, I really believe it could go really higher from here on.
Okay, IdeaForge Technologies, would you want to give out 2 reasons why you think this could be the dark horse for 2024, Nirav?
Yeah, so going ahead, also considering it's an election year, and whatever the outcome is, we believe that defense as a segment, and the sector at large, focusing on manufacturing in India, capital goods, etc., are going to gain prominence because that's the economic need of the hour. And Idea First Technology as a business sits right at the center of such economic demands and policy demands, right? So there's going to be a very good policy push, a very good sectoral tailwind working in favor of IdeaForge. At the same time, if you look at the business profile of IdeaForge, it clearly has some very distinct modes in the segments that it operates in. At the same time, the financial health looks pretty reasonable at this point in time. I wouldn't say that it's amongst the most stellar financials that we have seen, but and also considering that there are very limited listed peers to compare with on a standalone isolated basis, if one were to take a cursory look at the financials, it does look like a prudently managed company, at least from a financial standpoint. So that should continue to really be the wind beneath their wings when the sectoral tailwinds start pushing it forward.
All right, Nirav, Gaurang, would you want to add on to the dark horses list for 2024?
So one that really came down despite of having great expectation was Mamaearth. I think it just crashed down onto earth post listing. There was a 10% downtick. I think then there were quite an interesting few block deals, if I'm not mistaken. The concern was not on the business front, Nikki, but the concern was on the IPO floor. And we also felt, though we had a positive coverage, let me say it very frankly on your show, on Mamaearth IPO, Honosa. But we were absolutely clear that no one has to look at listing gains over here because of the premium that it commanded. And then post that correction, we encouraged investors from a long-term point of view to go ahead and add to it or make fresh investments. And I hope the business outlook that was shared by the management really works out in 2024. So that is one conviction call, if I have to put it as a dark horse.
Okay, and for you, the disappointment was also Mamaearth, right?
Yeah, it was Mamaearth as well as Fedfin.
Okay, Kempfin. All right. From the ones which have also done really well in terms of the listing gains of the lot, which I'm going to, of course, put forward, which of the IPO you still look are attractive? Now, these are just the IPOs which I've picked up based on the listing day pop. Tata Technologies, 3-idiot fame, IdeaForge Technologies, and Utkarsh Small Finance Bank, of course, and IREDA, and surprise, surprise, Mothison Jewellers too. What are you going to make out of that? Gaurang?
Is that a question? Yeah, okay. So, okay. So, I'll still put my neck out on IREDA, despite the floor of the stock as well as the run-up that we've seen. I think it is somewhere close to about 90 rupees or thereabouts. And I was hearing into the interview of the management and their opportunities that lie ahead. And, Nikki, if India has to really step the accelerator on an overdrive mode, looking at the number of clean and green energy, whether it is solar or wind, I think for IREDA, it's going to be a huge opportunity in terms of scalability of business. So, and the management was very optimistic that in the next 2 to 5 years or 3 to 5 years, I think they are going to do great order execution. Already they have a very decent pipeline, and going into the future, they are quite optimistic about garnering more orders into the pipeline. So Tata Technologies, IREDA as favorites, despite the kind of listing gains we have seen and the valuation that they command. And in terms of dark horse, it will be Mamaearth. And if I have to put one more name, then it will be Cello. I hope the unorganized competition they are able to overcome, and product offering should be increased going forward from them.
All right, Gaurang. Nirav, what about you? Of the 5 that I have given in terms of the listing day pop, which still looks good to you? Tata Tech, Ideaforge, Utkarsh Small Finance Bank, IREDA, or Mothison Jewellers?
So, I would concur with Gaurang on the first one, drawing on the earlier part of the conversation. I am very confident of IREDA, the segment that it's operating in and its execution capabilities. You take a closer look at the way they've been managing the finances so far, it all is pretty reassuring. So, IREDA at the top, definitely. And after IREDA, for reasons stated earlier, I feel it would be IdeaForge.
All right, gentlemen, both of you did not talk about Mothison Jewellers, the kind of listing day gains that Mothison Jewellers, of course, saw, despite the kind of quality that we've seen for, the IPO. There has been a promoter history, which perhaps is a little bit questionable, corporate governance issues. None of that actually had any kind of bearing on IPO, at least the listing day gain and the bidding that we saw. Does that concern you?
Yeah,
Well, so honestly, sorry,
Go ahead. Nirav, go ahead.
So about Motisans, I'll tell you, one thing. Welcome to the exuberance. This is what happens, and I'll tell you, it is not completely 100% exuberance. Although some of it can be attributed to it, but it really did not impact the public at large. I feel because of the issue size and the ability to allocate to such a sector. If you look at the peer comps, every other peer in the listed segment are appearing slightly costly. So anyone who believing in the growth narrative of the sector from a top-down approach and wants to play the sector, this seem to be like a very good play. However, Nikki, as you rightly pointed out, the devils are in the details, and there are very limited. There's very limited participation, or let's say cheerleading, happening from the institutional front also for this very reason. So I believe this is a bit that more subscribers missed out on while looking at Mothison Jewellers. But at the same time, I won't say it is out and out irrational. For some reason, we believe the investors at large or the market at large decided that for the valuations that it was commanding, and if you adjust the risks, it seemed like a bet worth it. So I wouldn't question the market's wisdom at this point, but I believe that the market will continue to take a harder look, and it will take some time before the fair value really emerges.
Sure. Gaurang, what about you? Are you surprised with the kind of gains that you've seen from Mothison, or you think it's much in line with expectation?
Markets is always surprising, and it throws a lot of surprises, whether it is secondary or primary, Nikki. For Geojit, what we look at primarily is the corporate governance. And if you look at these entire gems and jewelry, then there are a lot of names regionally which are from the unorganized, unlisted universe who have actually bombed. They've just disappeared overnight. They've attracted a lot of investment scheme, XYZ, buy today, give tomorrow, day after, get your old gold, take new gold, etc., and whatnot. So whenever it comes to corporate governance, Nikki, especially in a sector like this, gems and jewelry, I think one needs to be extremely, extremely careful. However fair or very attractive valuation it may have.
Okay. Also, Gaurang, which are the IPOs you would look forward to in 2024? Some of the notable ones, of course, include the likes of Swiggy, First Cry, Ola Electric, Oyo, and Portia Medical. What's your take? Which one do you like?
So I've just glanced through it. Haven't really committed any kind of coverage. But First Cry is something that I would possibly be having a second look at. Ola Electric, to be very honest, I think the ground report that we've had with the customers and the feedback as far as after sales are concerned, there is a big question mark. And compared to the products that they manufacture, there are much better and decent products available with history of credibility. So I think we would be avoiding that one. But in terms of the likely possibility of more names coming and hitting the street to garner funds and get listed, I think the sectors that we would be looking forward would be from the electronic manufacturing, especially from the semiconductor chip, stroke, solar cells, and of course, like my good friend was mentioning about JSW Infra. I think if India is going to be focusing upon exports and and making India a manufacturing hub, then container and port logistic companies would be the other sector that one would be looking at.
Any specific names, Gaurang, that you'd like to throw in?
I haven't really zeroed down on that, Nikki. I think we'll discuss this as and when we have a more clarity on that. But one name that from the list you mentioned, I think First Cry would be an interesting one, provided the valuations are justified.
All right. Nirav, what about you?
So going into 2024, of course, there are a few, heavyweight names that are there on the list. And, of course, it is a subject matter of details, whether one should opt for such an IPO or not. But there are a few names that I would be really interested in taking a very closer look at. So such names would include Go-Digit Insurance. It could include Medi Assist Healthcare. It could include NSDL as a very important play in the segment. So you look at it, you'll sense that I'm on the lookout for certain stocks that offer access to a certain theme or a certain play that is very important from a larger thematic perspective, and at the same time has very limited listed peers. So this offers access to play the theme, and of course this comes with the caveat that the business must be well run. But I believe that these are some very good names to look very closely at. Of course, there are going to be some more sensational IPOs like Ola Electric that will come along, or Tata Play for that matter, or Oyo, which is a more household name. But I feel that I would put that in the tier 2 and look at these businesses first over them.
Gaurang ji, क्या लगता है NSE IPO list हो जाएगा 2024 में? It's faced a lot of SEBI hurdles amidst legal overhang, but I think investor community across has been waiting for this IPO.
So what I read a report that there is excitement of NSE IPO coming in 2024, but it comes in with a lot of caveats with the kind of history that we've had. But let's hope so. राम जी पधार रहे हैं 22 जनवरी को, राम लल्ला जी पधार रहे हैं, और यही उम्मीद करते हैं. Let's hope that with Ram ji's कृपा, NSE is able to sail through this.
What about you, Nirav? What's your take?
So I am pretty confident that NSE IPO is soon going to be a reality. In fact, in a very recent interaction, also the chairman spoke about how he is really intent on, if all things remain constant and the stars align, he would really love to have the NSE IPO in 2024. Considering how, these things are generally long gestation, it could probably extend a little further from calendar year 24. But I believe, we'll be more or less around 2024, if not calendar year, probably financial year, the coming FY25 is when we will see the NSE IPO actually take off.
Fair. Okay, Gaurang, 3 tips for our viewers out there to maximize gains from IPO. Let's just take away the fact that allocation is an issue, so that needs to be taken off. But 3 tips according to you which can maximize their gains.
So firstly, I think people have got spoiled for choice when it comes to listing gains. So you don't have to look at each and every paper that hits the IPO with listing gains. Some of them can possibly get listed at a very marginal premium or at par, maybe some at discount. Look at the business model, look at the opportunity that lies ahead, look at the credibility of the management, and one of the most important things that I think all of us will agree is the valuation. And nowadays, Nikki, I think it has become very easy for a retail small investor to make out whether the IPO is credible or not, whether he or she wants to go ahead and subscribe for that or not. So there's a lot of information available on platform, especially moneycontrol.com provides a lot of information. I think you have to just click a button and you get all the information. So these are the 3 things that I would look forward to. But I would again advise investors that don't get into a habit of listing gains. I think that might spoil your game.
All right, that's also the advice coming in. Nirav, what about you? 3 tips that can essentially maximize gains, and also 3 things that you think investors shouldn't do while going for IPOs.
I feel the second one is much easier. So the three things that an investor must not do is not go on hearsay. Number one, so there will be talks and buzz around pre-market premium and tips per se. Don't really fall for it, because while quite often than not, one may feel that they are an indicator. They are not quite an indicator, and you're not really sure of whether it really reflects the sentiment or not. So one, don't rely on hearsay. Number two, like Gaurang said perfectly, don't invest in an IPO just for the listing gains. Hope is not a strategy. So just simply hoping that it will list at a pop shouldn't be your investment rationale. And I feel third, it is important to use leverage very sparingly. This is becoming a more prominent thing, among more seasoned investors. And investors with generally access to a good chunk of capital. But be very, very careful with leverage. Leverage, one needs to be careful even in secondary markets, but even while entering primary markets, be very sure of how you're doing that. So these are the three things that investors must not do, or be very cautious while attempting. The three things to be very sure of is number one, I would say, study the company like you were buying a part of business. Study it like you were to own it, even if it were in the secondary market, right? So study it like you would study any other investment opportunity, even in the secondary market. So don't make any distinction there. Number two, don't get swayed by floor prices and upper prices. This may seem slightly trivial, but from ground level feedback, I realized that this is actually one of the reason for uptake among many retail investors. Very specifically, it doesn't really matter if the price is in 2 digits or 3 digits or 4 digits. It doesn't really matter. What really matters is the valuation and not the value itself. Just because something is in the price band of, let's say, 50 to 60 rupees doesn't make it a much better or valuable bet than something listed in the 500 to 600 sort of a bracket, right? So don't go by numbers in isolation. It may seem trivial, but this problem is more common than you can imagine. And third, very importantly, whenever looking at an IPO, invest in it if you feel comfortable investing in it, even after post listing. So if your investment thesis is such that you are okay with investing in it, even if it is post listing, that should be a green light for you. If you are investing and you feel the urge to invest only during the IPO period, I feel it is time to take a step back and introspect whether your rationale is really clinging onto fundamentals, or are you moving towards the listing pop. And of course, never underestimate the power of analyzing governance, financial strengths, and business strengths. The trifecta is really important. Study it as much as possible in as much depth as possible, and be highly convinced before you make that investment decision.
Well, point well taken. And also there is a detailed article on Moneycontrol which gives 7 tips for 2024 as to how you can maximize these gains. Just reading in few points that might just be interesting for you all. First is entering for listing gain, think exit first. That's also something that you need to be mindful of. Don't elongate your losses if you've just thought of that listing pop. Track black, white and grey. You should know all the strengths, weaknesses, and also better your chances in terms of go for issue sizes which are above 500 crore and more. Larger issue size usually do not free the frenzied buying activity as you see for SME. Now wait till last minute also is an advice which I'm sure something that you need to be mindful of. Check out the demand for the first 2 days, and then later last day morning is when you can place in the bids. Of course, quality, price, or both markets are pretty decent that way, intelligent in terms of going for not just the price but also quality. So be mindful about that. And apart from that, use your leverage judiciously and go for buffet, not a binge, which means that resist the temptation to binge on a single stock or sector. Gaurang, anything that you'd like to add in?
Well, one point that I would like to, exaggerate what Nirav and you were discussing is leverage. Nikki, I have come across many cases wherein people have leveraged left, right, and center, taken risk and put money into new papers that hit the market, and I've seen lives getting destroyed. So my humble request is, जितनी चादर है उतना पैर फैलाओ, ज्यादा करने की जरूरत नहीं है. Because if you try to become a Robin Hood, then you might end up being a joker of the circus. So please don't try to do any kind of risk involved activities like leverage or over leverage. Try to be satisfied with whatever you have and whatever you can afford.
All right, Gaurang, we are going to leave it at that. And thank you so much for taking out the time and joining us both, Nirav and Gaurang. Also wishing you both a very happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you and the audience as well, Nikki.
Thank you. Pleasure. But with this, it's a wrap and goodbye from the entire team who puts this piece together. Thank you so much for watching. Please do post your feedback for us in the comment section below. Follow us on the link at the bottom of your screen. And for rest of the updates, stay tuned into moneycontrol.com and Moneycontrol app. Also, a happy New Year to you and your family.